Hi guys, this is Miss Simon. So I wanted to do this video today to help you guys out with writing. So you guys, yesterday you finished up your expository essays for the coronavirus. So the last unit we're gonna talk about this year, the last form of writing is functional texts, okay? Remember we did talk about functional texts earlier in the year. All right, so today we're just gonna kind of review what a functional text is, what the purpose of it is, and then you guys are actually going to tie in what you're doing in your math project, in your Geometricity project, to ultimately create a slideshow brochure of your city, because a brochure would be an example of a functional text, and after today's lesson, we'll kind of see why that is, okay? All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you, and we'll kind of go through a PowerPoint that kind of explains what a functional text is. All right, so remember we have talked about the functional text before, okay? If we look at this word functional, okay, I want you guys to think, what word do we kind of see or hear in there? Okay, if you said function, that is correct. And remember, if something is functioning, it has a purpose. So when we're talking about functional text, they have a purpose. There's a reason why we are looking at them. All right, let's see if I can get it to keep going. Okay. So I want you to think about it. Do you already know what a functional text is? We're looking at that word function. So a functional text is used for everyday information. It is called functional because it helps you function in your day-to-day life. Okay, so we've talked about, there's functional text kind of all around us, okay? The things that we use on a day-to-day basis to help us stay organized are examples of functional text. We use them in everyday information. Things such as recipes. We follow recipes in order to cook, so those recipes help us function. We use calendars to help us see what day it is and see if we need to do anything specific on those days. So those calendars would help us function, okay? So they're called functional texts because they're used for everyday information, and it helps us function in our day-to-day life, okay? So I want us to look at these examples. If I wanted to make chocolate chip cookies, what could I use to help me? So I'm sure many of you guys have made cookies before. What do you guys use to help you when you make cookies? If I wanted to know my friend's phone number, what could I use to help? Okay. So some of you guys might look it up in your phone. Okay. But there's also another thing we can do to kind of look up that information. Then the last scenario is, if my English teacher gave a test, what would I need to know how to take it? So what would I use to help me take it? All right, so we see if we're making cookies, we're using a recipe. Like I said, a recipe is an example of a functional text. It helps me make those cookies. If I want to know my friend's phone number, I could use something we know as a telephone book, okay? I could look, a telephone book is just a list of a bunch of names, and you look in it and it tells you that person's phone number. We don't see them as much now, but you guys, a lot of times when you go to the doctors, your parents might look up the phone number on the internet so they can call them. So that would be an example of a functional text as well. And finally, directions, okay? So if I give you a text, at the top, I always have a direction box. Directions are an example of functional text too, because they help you complete that test. So functional texts are anything that helps you get through your day-to-day, anything that helps you follow some type of directions, okay? So if you were going on a road trip and needed to know how to get there, you would use a lot of you guys will say a GPS, which would be the example of a functional text, or a map, which would also be an example of a functional text. It has a purpose. It's helping you get to your place. Okay. If you were going to see a movie and wanted to know when it started, you would look at a what? A movie listing. Many of you look these up online. This would be an example of a functional text. Okay. So we have many examples of functional text. We have the internet, newspapers, magazines, thesauruses, menus, recipes, roadmaps, phone books, dictionaries. They all help you function in your everyday life, so they are examples of functional texts. So now let's look at the different categories of functional texts. Okay, so we have 4 main types of functional text, 4 different categories. So our first category is going to be to follow directions. Okay, so we use all of these different types of functional text to follow directions. So we could use roadmaps, recipes, bus schedules, manuals. Manuals are kind of like those instruction books that come with games, or to put together a certain object like a desk or something. Craft instructions, game directions, building and street signs, first aid instruction. So our first category is just following directions. So we have functional texts that help us follow directions. Our second category is gaining information, okay? So these comes in menus, movie ads, TV schedules, school schedules, food labels, store flyers, okay? So anything that helps you gain information. We would also add brochures on this list as well, because when we're thinking about going to a place, we oftentimes might look at a brochure and see if it looks interesting to us. So we're using that brochure to get information about a place. So we have following directions, gaining information, references, okay? So this is where dictionaries, thesauruses, glossaries, phone directions, okay? Job manuals, table of contents, okay? Which we see a lot in different books that we read. Okay, we're using this as references. When you guys look up a vocabulary word, you use a dictionary, which is a functional text because we're looking up the definition. So it's used as a reference. So we have following directions, gaining information, using as references, and finally is to fill out forms, okay? So I know sometimes like different subscriptions, or if your parents are members at like Sam's Club or Costco, they have to fill out a form, okay? So any type of information that's gonna help you fill out a form is also gonna be a functional text. So we see school forms, baking forms, library card applications, anything also as simple as filling out one of those raffle tickets, okay? That would be an example of functional text as well. Okay. So I want you to think of all these examples I just kind of gave, which functional text do you think you use most in your life? Okay. Is it one that helps you follow directions? Is it one that helps you gain more information? Is it one that helps you fill out a form? Or is it one that kind of helps you use as a reference or follow directions, okay? So remember, we have our 4 categories there. And why is it important to you? So which functional text do you use on a day-to-day basis, and why is it so important to you? Okay. So now that we've kind of gone through what the different examples of functional texts are, you're going to use this lesson to help you fill out this, okay? This will be attached in a Google slide, and as long as you watch the lesson, you can successfully fill this out. So remember, functional text is used for everyday information. It is called functional because it helps you function in your day-to-day life. Then here on the bullet points, you're just going to put 2 examples of each type of functional text. And if you go back through this lesson, I kind of go through the slides that have those examples, okay? And then you're going to have a question on the bottom that I'm going to put that asks why a brochure would be considered a functional text, okay? Because specifically, we're going to be making, you guys are going to be making a Google slide presentation about your GeoCity, and specifically, it's going to be a brochure, okay? So why would a brochure be considered a functional text? All right, so I hope that this lesson was helpful, and have a great day. See ya.